Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here at my next Steven Universe episode review. This one's going to be for Season 4, Episode 4, Mindful Education. The episode came out a little bit early this time, not a couple of days early like the last episode. So, much easier for me to record them, being able to watch them at, basically evening my time rather than having to wait until like 1 in the morning when they officially come out. So yeah, let's just get into the episode. This was a very good episode, far and away the best episode of Season 4 so far, though I will say the last episode did surprise me with how good it was. I don't think this was a perfect episode. I've been seeing that it's been getting a lot of praise already, and I think it deserves a lot of that, but I think there are still a few issues with it. I'll get those out of the way at the start so I can focus more on the positives for most of the video. The first negative I had, which just kind of frustrated me with the episode, really sudden ending. It just ended in midair, I felt. It didn't really have a ton of resolution, and for an episode that was dealing with a lot of emotional stuff, like the Steven and Connie conversations, and especially what Steven was dealing with in the end, I felt you needed more than just ending it with, okay, they fuse back together, they're fine, they say, I'm here, and it's okay. I think you needed something more, like just an aftermath to kind of, okay, Steven and Connie officially defuse. They don't just like fall apart like they did a couple of times in the episode. I think they needed a scene at the end to kind of just highlight that, okay, Steven has to some extent addressed the issues with what he's dealt with the past couple of I suppose days, weeks in universe for him, with all of those incidents, the Bismuth incident, the Jasper incident, and then the incident with the Ruby in space in the finale. But to show that he still wasn't fully over it, because I didn't really take this episode as any sort of a like, Steven is now perfectly fine with what he did and is accepting of it now. He's just talked about it to everyone. This is Connie, who is learning about a lot of this stuff for the first time. Mainly the Ruby incident and Bismuth, because obviously I think she basically knew about... I don't know, it's hard to tell because obviously Connie keeps coming in and out of the show, like what she knows about and what she doesn't know about. But I suppose for her, this is her first time really learning that Steven feels this way about a lot of this stuff that just went down. And I just felt like you needed a bit at the end to kind of just highlight in terms of the show going forward that, look, Steven isn't past all of this. There's still a lot of stuff he's dealing with, but it will be addressed going forward. This just felt like, okay, we've gotten over the issue of the episode. The episode's over now, so bye. And it's been the case with a couple of these Stevonnie episodes. The first Stevonnie episode with Kevin at the dance, I thought that ended quite suddenly. The drifting episode a while back early in the Summer of Steven event, that ended quite suddenly as well, and another one here. I don't think it takes a ton away from the episode, but I just think it needed something, a little bit extra to end it, like maybe just Steven and Connie returning to Garnet and Pearl and saying, hey, we didn't get killed, we fell like 1,000,000 meters to the ground, but yeah, we're okay. Something like that, because Garnet was a pretty big part of this episode. I think you should have involved her to some extent with the end of the episode. Maybe fill Pearl in on it. Maybe Amethyst comes back from doing something and you fill her in on what's going on. Just little things like that I think you needed to kind of make the end of the episode a little bit more satisfying. The second issue I had with the episode was the issue that Connie dealt with, because obviously the format of this episode was basically, we start with Connie dealing with something, and that causes Stevonnie to break apart. We have Garnet talk to Steven and Connie to, talk to them about the importance of, letting everyone else know how you feel, talking about your kind of, these issues that you're dealing with other people to help you get past them. And that helps Connie to, address her problem. And then she, having learned from this, helps Steven to address his problems, which he has been keeping bottled up. Rightfully so. Steven's issues, had to be the more big, important, plot-focused ones. And Connie's one couldn't be as, I suppose big, But I still felt you could have done more than just manufacture an issue for this episode. the whole thing of her walking through her school, a boy accidentally bumping into her, and her acting on instinct and just flipping him and injuring him was interesting, but ultimately it adds kind of nothing to her character all that much, because they didn't really attempt to kind of speak to any, like, the fact that she flipped this person, does that mean anything other than the fact that she's just accidentally hurt someone and she feels upset about it. That's the problem. That ultimately, by the end of this episode, the issue that Connie dealt with doesn't actually have a lot of meaning. It's not actually important. It is just important that through that manufactured conflict, she got to the point where she could help Steven get through his, which was the actual important one. And that's a little bit of the frustration with this episode, because I feel like Connie is an important enough character, a deep enough character, that she has stuff that you can actually deal with in this episode that makes her part of the episode just as important. Just off the top of my head, from the episode Gem Hunt, the one where she basically goes on her first mission and she's all excited about, I'll prove myself on this mission, and she's been training a lot, and then when it comes down to a fight, she struggles in the fight but finishes the mission by calling Pearl in. I still feel like it is an unresolved issue that Connie will probably still feel not very confident about fighting on her own. And given that the next fight that she was potentially involved in was the one against Jasper where they had to form Stevani, I thought the issue, given the preview for this episode that we would be dealing with, would be Connie feeling sad because they've specifically organized a training session for Stevani, and she potentially feels like she is now only useful as part of Stevani because they've maybe decided that just Connie on her own isn't strong enough just yet, she's not suited for battle or whatever. I feel like that would have been the more character important plot to deal with, and then, have Connie earlier on in the episode just resolve that through other people's interactions that, no, look, that was your first thing, we accomplished the mission we were meant to in that case. It is not all about fighting, but you are training and you will get to the point where you will be able to fight on your own and be strong. I feel like that's probably the better one they should have went for, because it would have linked into her kind of character arc they're sort of going for. Again, this problem's because Connie keeps coming in and out of the show and she never really has a continuous arc, but I feel like if there is one, it is her training and her confidence in battle. I feel like that was what they should have dealt with, more so than what they actually did. I ultimately, it was fine what they did, the whole idea of this boy, I think his name was Jeff, who she flipped over, injured, and the resolution was that she actually ran off in the first place, and she actually went to talk to him, and he was actually fairly okay with it, and was just like, actually, can you teach me some tips for how to defend myself, like how to do moves like that? And that was fine, and Connie has more or less made another friend. That's cool and all, because obviously early on, one of Connie's things was that she doesn't have many friends, so it kind of fits, but again, I don't feel like this character is going to be a character who returns basically ever again. So that's just ultimately they're minor problems, but I think fixing them would have made the episode better than it actually was. Getting into the positives for the episode, so just so we move away from the negatives almost completely now, how this episode approached dealing with the issue of basically not expressing your feelings and not addressing the thoughts that kind of come into your head with other people, I thought was really well done. Obviously they did it through a song once again, but this one was interesting in that it was a Garnet and Stevani song, which is the first time we've seen Stevani sing, and then it was only really our probably second Garnet solo song. We've seen her sing in groups with people before, the opening and stuff like that. She has Stronger Than You, but this is the first time we've really had another one of these in a while. And I overall loved the use of Garnet in this episode and the use of Ruby and Sapphire as well, because Garnet is the go-to person for information on fusions, and Stevani as this new fusion who is being utilized a lot more. Stevani's been in a lot of episodes fairly recently. It makes sense that, Garnet would give them a lot of advice on it. That, if you were considering being a fusion for a lengthy amount of time, like you seem to be, you sort of need to know this stuff, that it, like, fusion is fine for like a couple of minutes, a couple of seconds, usually no problems really pop up. But if you want to stay together, it is important to really just be aware of the two people involved in the fusion, kind of like communicate with each other, and if one person has an issue, be able to bring it up, address it, and kind of let it go, all without causing an issue that actually breaks the fusion apart, like it does with Connie's issue and then later on with Steven's issue. And I just love how, you know, Garnet picked up on that and immediately kind of got Stevonnie to kind of work on it. By basically going into their inner minds and, I suppose, melding their inner minds so that Steven and Connie could see Ruby and Sapphire within Garnet, and basically see how Garnet deals with the similar issues to keep herself a fusion together for so long, and how that can help Stevonnie. And I really liked how they animated this. The animation was wonderful in this episode. And in the song, obviously, you don't really have Ruby and Sapphire speak, but you just have them, like, kind of moving around on their own, interacting, and they use butterflies as a way to kind of symbolize a thought coming up, a thought that affects someone enough to, like, distract them from things and make them upset. And how Ruby was kind of obsessed with one, and she kind of runs off on her own and gets so flustered about just one little thing coming up, and that perfectly fits Ruby's personality. She gets very angry about very simple things, but it's really only one simple thing. Whereas Sapphire, left on her own, just tons of them start coming out, and she becomes kind of overloaded with thoughts on little things. I suppose the explanation for that is kind of like her future vision kind of means that she sees a lot of bad stuff happen potentially, and she's always dealing with this and never overly talking about it because she's not as expressive as Ruby. And so you kind of have the two opposite sides of how you deal with things, like being overly kind of amped up about one thing versus trying not to show anything about a lot of things, and how together they kind of come together, realize they have each other to deal with these issues, and kind of can be together. And then they kind of switch to Stevonnie and more highlight the specifics we see in this episode of Connie fundamentally only has one issue that she's dealing with right now, and that is hurting this boy. And she's really upset with herself because she did it, and she ran off, and she just didn't talk about it. And Steven is the one to help her through that by just saying, you know, I'm here for you. And he's always that sort of character where you can bounce stuff off him and he helps you through it. That's kind of Steven's character. But for the second half of the episode, it's very interesting what they do, in that you have that scene earlier on in the episode before Garnet comes out, and Steven is trying to help Connie before she's kind of willing to accept what happened. And he just kind of tries to explain it away, that like, look, if it was an accident, you didn't mean it, you know, you didn't mean to hurt someone. And he's clearly talking without saying it about the three incidents that he was involved with. Primarily the Bismuth and the Ruby incident, where he directly led to Gems being hurt, but also I suppose the Jasper incident, where he was unable to, you know, end the situation in such a way where it didn't lead to Jasper needing to be poofed. So I thought that was a really cool little setup moment, that like this episode wasn't just going to be completely about Connie, it was also going to be focused more importantly on what Steven was going through. And so when they have the second training session, and you know, we get, you know, stuff like Connie can actually float. I'm not sure the way they were showing this was that Stevonnie has to kind of jump and then run in the air to activate the floating, or that is just the Connie side of Stevonnie being unused to naturally floating. So Connie in Stevonnie kind of does the running thing, and Steven activates the floating, and then they're going to have to like sync up fully, so that doesn't happen before. But I'm not really sure. That was just a cool little moment to reveal that Stevonnie can float as well, though it made complete sense. But yeah, then Steven's issues, when they do the kind of stab at one of the hollow pearls, and it really reminds Steven of what he was forced to do against Bismuth. That was really well done, the way they kind of flashed back and showed, and it was basically Connie experiencing Steven's memories and kind of discovering that, whoa, like you were in a situation where I wasn't there, where you had to do this to a gem. This is what you were like in space with the rubies. this is the Jasper incident where she got poofed. All of these situations where you were so upset about what had to happen and the fact that you had to, directly led to someone else being hurt, even though it wasn't directly, you weren't purposely trying to hurt anyone, you were just kind of like defending yourself. And then, most interesting visually of all, when they fall off the arena, it's them backing away from Rose, which was interesting in that, like, it really highlights that Stephen, to some extent, in his kind of, darkest fears, kind of fears that his mother was actually some sort of a bad person. Now, I thought they'd roughly dealt with this in the finale for season 3. I don't think I by no means expected them to fully deal with it, just with the whole Garnet telling Stephen that, look, she did shatter Pink Diamond, but it was for all of us. It was the right thing to do at the time. And Stephen understanding that because of the situations he's just been in, self-defense, that his mother must have had a valid reason. But in his deepest, darkest thoughts, his worst fears, maybe his mother wasn't the best person. Maybe on her own she kept secrets from people. She did do some bad stuff, and he's kind of, because he doesn't know a lot about his mother, he's afraid of the kind of mystery surrounding her. I just thought that was very interesting, that that's ultimately what kind of literally pushed them over the edge and kind of forced them to defuse in the air. And then I think the Stephen and Connie falling through the air moment was well done in terms of like an action moment that also had to be a very emotional moment of just, Connie being pretty cool and calm under pressure, like being able to manipulate herself in the air to kind of get over and grab Stephen, and so they're ready to fuse when she kind of deals with the issue. But just saying, like, it's okay to talk about things, like just like I did. I dealt with them by like addressing it and doing something about it. And it was really interesting to just see just how hurt Stephen was, because he's been upset before about some of these things, but he's relatively managed to hold it in. Like, obviously there's a lot of adrenaline during the fight with Bismuth and that happening. We didn't see him let out a ton of emotion there. He was on his own in Bubble, and just the situation was so crazy, like, he didn't get, like, super crazy emotional. But here, just, like, addressing all of this stuff he's been through, it was really interesting to see him just be so upset, just in no way wanting to feel that way, and Connie being the one to ultimately kind of help him through that, help him fuse, and save them, basically. So, I suppose final thoughts on the episode are that I think the song is very memorable. Love getting to see Garnet sing again, Stevonnie sing for the first time. It's really well done, the kind of duet. And then the visuals of that song were, as I said, wonderful with, I think this is Connie's first time seeing Ruby and Sapphire, so that was kind of interesting. Though they didn't like interact specifically, they just kind of like looked at each other. But yeah, the symbolism, the visual representation of thoughts, and they dealt with that really nicely during that song. And overall, what the episode dealt with was really interesting. Just someone not kind of addressing how they feel and their thoughts. It was a really interesting exploration with the reveal that two fusions can actually kind of link their fusion kind of minds together. To some extent, that was an interesting kind of reveal about the things that can happen. But as I said, it ended a little bit bluntly, and then I thought the Connie section of the episode could have been a little bit better without the very manufactured, she hurt this boy plot that I don't think ultimately means anything. They could have dealt with more of the stuff that she actually has going on. So yeah, that's been the review. In the comments, definitely let me know what your thoughts were on this episode. Do you agree with some of my criticisms of the episode? And how good do you think this episode actually was compared to a lot of the other ones that we have? But yeah, it looks like we are getting at least 2 more episodes in a row. We're getting Future Boy, what's it called, Zoltron or something like that next time. And then I think we have it confirmed that we're getting an episode called Gem Harvest after that, the following week, basically. So it looks like we're being weekly, but they're only kind of, we're going back to like one episode being announced at a time and then it's coming next week, rather than us knowing in advance that we're getting a bunch of episodes in a row. So yeah, I'll just end by saying, if you want to follow me on social media, links to my Twitter and Tumblr are in the description below. If you want to help support my channel so I can make better videos, more videos, links to my Patreon page and also my a PayPal donation link are also in the description. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.